let's say Deutsche Bank goes down, these derivatives tumble, there's financial chaos, and the government say, we're closing the stock exchange in the COMEX. Well, that takes care of everything for a while, doesn't it? Now they got a week or so to think what they're going to do, and they're going to come back and they'll say only needed commodities will be traded from now on. Metals aren't needed. Of course, silver is, but they could say whatever they want to say. So the agricultural commodities will be traded, but on a cash basis only and 3 months out from now on. The Treasury market will be run by the Treasury only. There will not be market makers in the Treasury market anymore. The stock exchange will open on the New York side on Wednesday. It'll open the Amex on Thursday. On Friday, the NASDAQ will open. And there's new set of rules. No margin is allowed anymore. All margin calls will be made on the following Thursday. Or on and on. Once it breaks through, all the algorithms on the planet will go long silver. Because once you're at a new high, the algorithms know that any new buying will take it far higher. And then it's a game of quant against quant. But when it comes down to settling, that's what's going to take it even further, because all the paper contracts that are going to be bought by the quants only control the price. They don't control the physical. So that the ones that need the physical will be the industrial users. I mean, the industrial users see the quants are in there, and they may not think in these terms, but silver's gone from 60 to 75 in 4 days. But it took 4 months to break through that $50 barrier the fourth time. They're going to get concerned, and they have to buy it physically. So that's going to drive the physical supply. At the same time, there's multiple contracts per ounce going crazy. Wait and see. It's going to be an exciting time in the precious metals markets. It's not over yet by a long, long ways.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. I'm Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest who's well anticipated by all our viewers. This is David Morgan of themorganreport.com. David, thanks for joining us this Tuesday, October 20th, 2020.
It's 10/20/2020. It's quite a date. Dunnigan, thanks. It's always fun to be with you, and I do like to rock and roll with these questions. Some are pretty involved, but I don't mind. I'll do my best. So let's go for the lightning round, as they used to say on the General Electric, whatever that was.
The rapid fire, yeah. You're always a great sport about that. Our viewers appreciate it. They always anticipate you're coming on here, and they've submitted a number of questions ahead of your arrival. We had you on less than 6 months ago, and we talked about that the reset had just happened, and
right.
We talked about some rather major events. I think it started with the bond repos in September of last year, and then it just got a lot worse with a bunch of changes that had happened in a number of markets in March of this year. We have a question from Anna Kryslinsky who says, the so-called reset happened and no one noticed. LIBOR contracts changed to SOFR. It's already too late. Could you let us know your perspective on what the impact is you think of this? We've heard anywhere from 80 trillion to 200 trillion of interest rate swap derivatives or whatever are getting repriced from the LIBOR method that was used in the past and is no longer going to be used going forward, and that could impact a lot of other financial instruments. What's your take on the actual impact of that? Or do you think there's something else that's maybe we should be looking at as far as this major reset?
Well, I mean, I'm never short for words. I'm short for words because to actually go into depth on this, I could probably do a 8-hour lecture on everything to do with the reset. But to try to be brief and surmise what she's asked, even if I understand what she really wants to verify or ask, the reset has started. Everything will be repriced. And the main thing is the banks are going to do everything in their power to stay in power, which means they're going to this digital currency. They're calling for a new Bretton Woods, and they are going to enact their power over the people. That's what they want. And they may succeed. So I don't know what else to comment on other than, the crisis that we keep hearing about is overdone. I think I can say that with authority. I'm not trying to discount anyone that's having a hard time or died or anything like that. It's not my nature. But my nature is also to tell it like it is and call them as I see them. And, when you look at the total death rate in the years past versus the total death rate this year basically hasn't changed. And I accredit lots of people, but particularly my friend Hugo Salinas Price from Mexico. Wrote an article recently in Spanish, and of course, I'm a very poor Spanish speaker and worse reader, but I translated it and read it and basically said that. The only way to prove there's a pandemic is to see what the death toll is. That is the nonfiction, objective reality that you can guarantee if there's a pandemic or if there is not a pandemic. And basically, by the data, it speaks for itself. So it probably went down a bit of a tangent that she didn't expect, but that plays into this whole thing. It's a mind game. It's a mind conditioning thing to take us where they want us to go. And anything that doesn't go within what their parameters are, it's CV, it's CV, it's CV. So they have this straw man built up that I'd say, 70% of the population maybe is already conditioned to believe that. And so now if something didn't happen, it's not the banker's fault, it's not the government's fault, it's not the company's fault, it's CV.
Yeah, there was definitely
Go ahead. Your comment, of course.
Definitely the phenomenon we observed in first quarter where this huge lockdown response globally to just completely shut down the global economy in phases, country at a time, seemed strange because not only had that never happened before, but also the economy, this extraordinary actions on the part of like the bond repos and liquidity injections and so on by the Fed already seemed to be indicating that we were in major, major trouble. There had already been this huge disconnect for anywhere from 8 to 14 months as far as the trucking index and all these other measurements of actual physical economic activity, saying that we were in this deepening great recession that wasn't being acknowledged by any of the official powers. And yet then suddenly it's like, CV ate my homework. That's going to be the excuse for everything. Did you see prior to that what we've realized afterwards was that the economy was already well on its knees prior to all of the lockdown?
Yeah, and it's in the record. I mean, I do the weekly perspective every week, which is, one man and a microphone, yours truly, speaking every week, and I do a financial wrap-up, and I use their own news, I won't say against them, but I use their own news sources to prove the reality. And I've been saying 6 months before this that there was a major contraction in the global economy, and there were going to be severe food problems ahead. And that was well before we ever got to March.
Now that we're where we are, some people credit the lack of a major spike in death rate, as you mentioned, to the extraordinary measures. They say, well, had we not done all these extraordinary measures, then we would have seen. So it's folly to stop doing them. And that seems to be, everybody keeps using that dreaded term, the new normal, as though we're going to have to just stay with this mask wearing, social distancing, businesses being closed, any cruise lines, movie theaters, sporting events, anything as far as the eye can see. Nobody has any clarity of when those would ever be able to reopen as part of the economy. In your view, is there any rhyme or reason to why those specific industries, those specific types of activity would be targeted, or do you feel that it's just part of the overall conditioning of making sure that you have compliance on the part of the general population to whatever measures are announced by the authorities?
It's both. The first and most important is the mind control. So the cognitive map, the fancy way to say the way you think. So make sure everybody's on board with the hive mind. And if you're not masked up, you're, a no good or whatever. And the second part is to basically take out all free enterprise that's possible. So you notice that the corporate restaurants are doing fine. If anyone is familiar with the movie Demolition Man, or somewhere in that movie it talks about, Taco Bell was like the last corporate chain that survived, So everybody goes to Taco Bell to dine. And that's kind of a metaphor for what's going on. So, your McDonald's had a great quarter. and the other corporate type restaurants, but all your mom and pop breakfast places, lunch places, some of these people pour their heart into these restaurants. And, for the most part, many of them are just decimated and many won't come back. And the trend continues. I mean, there's some that are still up and running and maybe making it barely. So, yeah, it's two. It's to make sure that we have a mind control over the majority. It'll never get it over the minority, and they know that. And then it's specifically to take out as much free enterprise as possible. So it's not just restaurants, which is the easiest example most people are familiar with, but it's all of your non-corporate, mom and pop as a metaphor type of businesses. It's, the clothing shops. It's, you can name a lot of service businesses. I mean, look at how many people that had hair salons that probably are out of business, and you go down the line. So the idea is that you're either, as George Bush Jr. said, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either in the system at the corporate level, which is a corporatocracy. I can't say the word. Fascism is basically an alliance between corporations and government, where the corporations actually have the power, which is the case. I'm on a tangent, but I'm going to stick with it for a couple of minutes. All the lobbying has to do not with better government. It has to do with lobbyists making sure that the corporations get the advantages that they want or monopolize what they want. And this is a monopoly. If you're going to only have Applebee's, McDonald's, you name your favorite chain restaurant as your dining choices, and all the people that you maybe really wanted to go to no longer exist, you're in the system. And then, of course, there'll be more and more people in the system that are thinking that they're in the system thinking perhaps they're free, meaning universal basic income. So when you're on UBI, you're in the system. If you're in a corporate job, you're in the system. If you're a government employee, you're in the system. And I'm not saying the system's good or bad. What I'm saying is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's where we are. As George Orwell said, speaking the truth in times of universal deceit is a revolutionary act. And those that have spoken out have been censored. I mean, you look at SGT report, X22, Sarah Westall. There's 5 or 6 I wish I could name off the top of my head. Max Egan. Several of these people that absolutely speak from the head, the heart, and are critical thinkers and absolutely help others with no reward in some cases. Some are monetized sites. That's immaterial to me. But they're taken out for free speech. So if you can't see what's going on, whether you're left, right, or nowhere, I mean, I'm a nowhere. I don't believe in the left-right paradigm. I believe there's a left wing, a right wing, and it's attached to the same bird, and it's flying down the same path, slower or faster, higher or lower, but it's going that direction regardless of who's there. Back on point, it's at a point where I don't know how much more waking up we can do. I think we're almost at the point that, like some of those that I just named have said, either you spend your time from this point forward protecting those in your family, your community, your friends, those nearby, and really don't spend a lot of your energy trying to wake more people up. And I think there's merit in that. I'm not trying to be hardcore. I'm not trying to be a lone wolf. I'm just saying that, I was one of the beginners. I'm in this sequence, in this bull market. I learned from my betters, and I mean that. People that were men and women that I thought were better than me, but I strive to equal their greatness. And I carried the message. It's not me, it's the message. But the message of freedom is paramount. And this is the message that we should be shouting, because it's not about if SGT report was always right, or if they did this controversial interview, or that they did something with a conspiracy, or any of that nonsense. It's all about free speech. That means free speech, period. So again, I hit a vector off of one of your questions, but these are important things to me, and they should be important to everybody, because freedom isn't free. And there's going to be a whole generation here that are going to learn that. And we're at a point in history that's one of the most remarkable ever faced in a very, very long time. And it's here in America. And America purportedly is the last bastion of hope for freedom on a global basis. Is that true or is that false? I really don't know. What I do know is the principles that we are purportedly holding dear have been lost. We've lost our way. A few of us haven't, and I'm not speaking about yours truly. What I'm speaking about is the principles, again, that whoever holds it as the highest value that we can have. I mean, the idea of the beginning wasn't enacted probably as well as it could have been, but at least the principle was same rules, laws, and accountability for everyone. Citizen was the top rank. You couldn't go above citizen. President worked for you. Vice president worked for you. Senator worked for you. Congress critters worked for you. And the citizens were well armed with knowledge and power, because knowledge is power. And they knew exactly what the law was. And if any of those Congress critters or senators or elected officials weren't obeying the law, then they, the citizenry, were going to hold them accountable. But those days are long, long gone.
Yeah, that echoes a lot of what we've heard from Dr. Edwin Vieira, who's been on talking to us about the duty and the calling and the responsibility that we have as members of this country and of our respective states to be in the position of authority, constitutional authority. And there's a duty that comes with that that's been, we've been both willfully and coercively deprived of over the past several generations, to where now it's a forgotten thing to the great extent. There's two more points you hit on that I wanted to circle back on. One, you talked about universal basic income, and we were just talking with a small-time employer who runs a natural foods herbal shop that we purchase herbs from, and he said he can't even get people to come work for him because they can make more money on unemployment than they can coming to work. And he even had to let one of his workers, who he had let go temporarily, tried to hire back. She said, "I'm making more on unemployment." So that sweet taste of unemployment / government dole / UBI is extremely habit forming. If I wasn't maybe addictive, but once you taste that, it really can change people's taste to where they're not exactly got the fire in the belly anymore to go after, especially if they don't believe that the system's going to support fair rewards and really giving them a shot based on their initiative. Well, I'll settle for this then because it's a free handout. One of the things that we talked about that is that the verbiage, if you listen to some of the debates and that you can tolerate to listen to, there's this talk about, I won't be taking political sides here, but when people saying that Trump wants to wrest away or yank away, like Obamacare, from the people who have been enjoying it now and appreciating it, there's this sense of depriving somebody, taking something away from somebody. And you think about like a tiger caged in the zoo. My wife was talking to me about this. You could, if you set him free, well, you're depriving him of his nightly meal that you were going to give him, depriving him of the little shelter that you provided, depriving him of all the comforts that you had provided. But now he's got his freedom. So I don't know if you had any more thoughts about universal basic income as we've experienced it, people holding out hope for these bailout checks or that sort of thing. We see it at the corporate level. But do you think that that's changing the public sentiment of dependency and accommodating us, customizing us to dependency on government?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of, I could say, and I prefer to be kind of quiet about it. The idea about having to pay people arose with me a couple decades ago. I mean, I could see where, robotics and automation and the green, not green energy, but the green movement, which in those days was this massive corporate farms that have been around for at least a couple decades, where you'd be able to grow food more efficiently, purportedly more efficiently. And all this going where there would be less and less jobs available as more and more humans populated the planet. So I did see, not was it called UBI, I just saw there'd be something would have to be done. And basically you'd pay people just to do nothing. And I'm not going to make a moral judgment on it at all, because there are people that, have been doing everything, quote unquote, right their whole lives. And maybe they're working for their brother-in-law's restaurant, working their patootie off. And now unemployment's a pretty tasty treat relative to the amount of work they're putting in. Who am I to say that's wrong? I'm not. What I am saying is that the idea of getting something for nothing doesn't work for very long. And again, circling back, what price freedom? I mean, if you had a choice of getting a free check or starving, I mean, who wouldn't take the free check? Come on, everybody would, as far as I'm concerned. So there's it's a very gray area. It's not a clear-cut moral issue for me. I mean, I am a big believer that there are absolutes, but there are many gray areas as well. Not everything is an absolute. In fact, there aren't that many that are, but there are. Just say it that way. I wish I had more solutions than the ability to articulate the problem, but there isn't one that won't be easily bestowed to everyone, because there's different political ideas and ideologies that people hold very, very strongly to. And as this collapse unravels, there'll be instances where those in certain areas will be able to try different types of political structures. There'll be the anarcho-capitalists, there'll be the socialists, there'll be the, whatever. There'll be the dictatorships, there'll be these smallish communities as things tumble further and the rule of law breaks down. And it'll be interesting because you'll be able to see real time, which communities do the best. And the ones at that point, the UBI probably won't have any meaning. Now, is it going to go that far or not? I'm not stating here, looking in the camera, saying that's absolutely where it's going to go. But you also have to keep your eyes open and be able to look with eyes that see on how many tent cities there are already and how many San Franciscos there are. And this is the reality right now, right here. So you don't have to look very far to see the reality of what is, and then you can take the trend line from that point and see, is it getting better, is it getting worse, regardless of what the political class rhetoric is, or who's getting up there and saying that they care. The reality is the trend is clearly established. It's going to be higher costs in food. You're going to have so many people that are permanently unemployed, and these people are going to be in dire straits, especially when/if, and I'll say when, this moratorium on mortgage payments and stuff comes off, and you're expected to pay the bank back the money that you were, this forbearance relieved you of for a temporary amount of time. So it's tough, and it's going to get tougher. And I wish I, again, had more to give as far as solutions are concerned. I don't. But I constantly think about it, and I'll just leave it there.
We wanted to follow back on one more question that you brought up, was about this notion of us being divided against each other as a people, because people are tending to take sides about, yes, they think we should conform to these restrictions that are being mandated, versus people say, no, we should resist these. And it's ironic to us, my wife and I look at this and see, even within our own family, even within our own circles of acquaintances, neighbors, and that sort of thing, that you don't need the authorities coming down on people, because basically most or many, I would say many in the population, have basically been deputized psychologically and emotionally to be the enforcers of those who come on strong saying, you're out of line, you're out of step if you're not abiding by these restrictions. So it's a very strange experience in a country where we were raised to believe in liberty and freedom and the American ideals that, as you mentioned, started our country in the first place, where the people had the proper perspective of themselves as the sovereign. And now we have our own within our own neighborhoods, within our own families, those who are. It reminds me, I guess, of the debates you hear between the loyalists versus the, back in the days of the American Revolution or something. Those who want to stay loyal to the king. What do you see? You mentioned the potential, the opportunity for these little structures to spring up in this new world. What do you see happening in terms of the people being unified versus the people divided against each other, against ourselves?
Well, it'll be division first, in my studied view, and after that wears out, dies out, wears off, exhausts, then you'll see coming together. Now, there will be communities that are together right from the start, but a lot of it will be kind of that old adage that Americans always do the right thing. It just happens to be the last thing that they try. It'll be kind of like that. I would like to take a vector off of this whole idea of, one against the other. Let's just look at vaccines. I'm not going to make a statement on my belief system on vaccines, but let's just make a presupposition. And whether you agree with this or not is not the point. The point is you have to take the presupposition as the basis. I do this in engineering. You're taught to do it.
It's a thought experiment. Understand?
Yeah. And you give the given. The given is that vaccines work. So if you are not willing to take the vaccine, that should be your right. And here's why. If you take the vaccine and it works, then anyone that doesn't take the vaccine isn't going to hurt you. So if you want to be protected from this virus crisis thing, and the vaccine does it, then if you take it, you are free of any problem. For anybody that doesn't take it, you're not going to get it. So that's individual. And if someone decides not to take it, that should have no bearing whatsoever on you, because you aren't going to get it. You took a vaccine to protect yourself. So that shows you how absolutely, totally, and completely ridiculous this whole debate is. If it works, let's presume it does, then everybody that wants it should take it. But all the people that don't want to take it don't, because they are the ones that are at risk, and it's their free will to make that decision. But they're not going to hurt anybody that's taken the vaccine, if and only if, of course, it really does work. Something to think about.
If we could turn our attention now to some questions that were submitted about precious metals. We always get off talking about liberty, which is fine. That's, in the end, perhaps more important. Or one of the reasons we talk about precious metals is because
liberty and finance
it helps you to secure your liberty. Nitro says, David, do you believe that stimulus will cause us to get higher PM prices, or will they once again try to suppress the price? I guess what I'm asking is this the end of artificially low metals prices? So all the stimulus, currency creation that's been going on.
It is. I'm pretty convinced. I mean, there's so many metrics I could shoot to you, but one is the technical work, and if you don't know what technical analysis is, that's fine. Fundamentally, there's been a higher buying amount of silver this year, 2020, than probably ever before on an annual basis. I'm not talking silver eagles specifically. I'm talking silver, meaning commercial bars, though so much has gone to the ETFs. So it's rivaling right now pretty close to, or maybe exceeding slightly, the industrial demand. Now, industrial demand will fall off by maybe 10%, maybe 20%, I don't know. But that's immaterial. It always moves at the margin. The margin is investment demand, monetary demand, and that has been screaming this year. And that's a precursor to the next couple of years as the currency depreciation continues, as he mentioned, as Nitro mentioned. Well, a couple points. Number one is it is the largest and it is the transparent setting mechanism for the price. There's no question about that. But the actual biggest is opaque. It's the over-the-counter derivatives market in the precious metals that no one really could get a good handle on. So there's that, which is something that very few even talk about. But we're not there yet. I still think there's enough silver in those warehouses, depositories, vaults, whatever you want to call them. There was a great input in silver in these bad years, meaning, the $18 silver, and the bullion banks had no place to put it other than on the shelves. And they did. Now, I don't want to contradict myself. A lot of that silver has come off the shelves, or let's say the ownership, maybe it's still on the shelf, but the ownership has changed to the ETF holders and others. Lots of retail and lots of, even pension funds now. And so there's been I won't call it a run to the precious metals, but there's a jog to the precious metals. And silver, especially, is such a small market that, I could be wrong tomorrow if Warren Buffett decided to double down on a silver position. For example, if what Buffett did in 1999 happened by the end of this week and he bought 130 million ounces of silver and asked the COMEX to deliver it, there'd be a big problem. When he did it in 1999, they only delivered 90 million ounces right off the bat. And they actually asked him to basically wait on the other 40 million. But regardless, so I don't want to be too tricky with my answer here, but I will say that I don't see it happening yet, and I don't see it happening for a few months. And I'm not sure it'll never happen officially. In other words, the way the contracts are written, the COMEX could call force majeure. They could say it was an act of God. They could say there's a strategic need for silver for the war effort. They could say, read the contract, we need the silver for, whatever new technology, and therefore we have to settle in cash. They'll never default or admit default, although they could. And most likely it will occur. Whether it occurs on the COMEX or not, I'm not clear on anymore. Not that it ever was. I think it could be a default somewhere through the supply chain mechanism where there's a big bank failure or there's something that, I'll just spit it out. Let's say Deutsche Bank goes down, these derivatives tumble, there's financial chaos, and the government say, we're closing the stock exchange in the COMEX. Well, that takes care of everything for a while, doesn't it? Now they got a week or so to think what they're going to do, and they're going to come back and they'll say something. This is all out of the top of my head. Well, I would say top of my head. I think about this stuff all the time. I'll say only needed commodities will be traded from now on. Metals aren't needed. Of course, silver is, but they could say whatever they want to say. So the agricultural commodities will be traded, but on a cash basis only and 3 months out from now on. The Treasury market will be run by the Treasury only. There will not be market makers in the Treasury market anymore. The stock exchange will open on the New York side on Wednesday. It'll open the Amex on Thursday. On Friday, the NASDAQ will open. And there's new set of rules. No margin is allowed anymore. All margin calls will be made on the following Thursday. Or on and on. I mean, I could keep going and going, but you get the idea. So there's lots of ways, sort of like what happened with this repo thing that was getting totally out of control. And all of a sudden, there was this pandemic thing that happened, and there's, look over here, Don't look at the problem anymore. Not that it's not a problem. I don't want to, I don't want to kowtow to everybody's whim and, but I also want to be cognizant of, the truth. And the truth is it has hurt some people. And, whether it exists or not, I think it's pretty clear it does. And, my personal belief about it is probably different than probably the majority. But, and I'm not trying to make light of it. What I'm trying to be very articulate about is that it's not as, it hasn't decimated, the population as we already talked about. So we can move on. But, I try to be sensitive to everything. There's so much to cover and so much going on, and all dots are connected now. I mean, an illness can cause financial problems. Financial problems could cause an illness. I mean, this is really the way it's going.
We had John Williams from shadowstats.com on about 2 weeks ago, and he talked to us about how his view of the true cost rate of inflation, if it were reflected in the people's understanding of our currency, they would see that the inflation-adjusted value of the currency is much lower, perhaps half or less now than what it was, say, back when we hit previous highs in precious metals. Tony asks, what year will silver get over its 1980 all-time high adjusted for inflation? It apparently will never happen.
Well, Tony, I can say you're right. So far, you are right. I think it'll happen next year. I think you'll get over $50 in 2021. Usually, commodities take 3 tries or sometimes 4 to get through a major resistance. It was a spike high in 1980. It was intraday. It was a spike high in 2011. It didn't really hit 50. It got within a couple bucks. And I think it will happen probably in 2021, probably not in January, but probably by the end of the year. And it may hit it and fall off, but then settle and build a base at, say, 40 or 42 or whatever. Have another run at it and break through. Once it breaks through, all the algorithms on the planet will go long silver. Because once you're at a new high, the algorithms know that any new buying will take it far higher. And then it's a game of quant against quant, because what they're going to do is it's going to be like a Russian roulette. They're going to hold it and they're going to spin the revolver, and they want to get out and sell before that bullet comes out. But they also are greedy, so they want to hold it long enough that maybe they'll let that hammer come down and there is no bullet and go for the next round. So there's going to be a run into silver like we've never seen for many reasons. But one of the reasons is all the quants out there that have the algorithms that know when silver gets past 50 and stays there for 3 days, they're going to go long. And they're going to go long in a big way. And it's not going to be real silver. It's going to be paper silver. So we're going to see something, if it exists, which it should still. I think it will. But when it comes down to settling, that's what's going to take it even further, because all the paper contracts that are going to be bought by the quants only control the price. They don't control the physical. So, but the ones that need the physical will be the industrial users. I mean, the industrial users see the quants are in there, and they're not thinking these terms, but silver's gone from 60 to 75 in 4 days, but it took 4 months to break through that $50 barrier the 4th time. They're going to get concerned, and they have to buy it physically. So that's going to dry up the physical supply. At the same time, there's multiple contracts per ounce going crazy. Wait and see. It's going to be an exciting time in the precious metals markets. It's not over yet by a long, long ways.
Mr. Nitty asks about the LODE project. People have talked about being able to tie precious metals to a blockchain. You've spoken about that with us several times in the past. Mr. Nitty says, can David talk about the benefits of the LODE project he's been part of and the future outlook of AGX and AUX coins as money outside the current system?
Yes, I am biased because I, put a lump of silver in there. I was one of the first to do it, so obviously I want to see it succeed. Basically, on this 3 year trek that the project has been on, I've certainly had my darker moments. I thought, boy, I wonder if this is really going to make it or not. You got to remember, only about 1% of startups actually succeed. 99% or something close to that fail. So I'm well aware of that fact. But I wouldn't say it's a replacement for physical silver in your hand. I mean, I've never made that statement. People might imply that I've made that inference or something along those lines. I haven't, but just because we say something doesn't mean it's always understood the way it was meant. But it's an adjunct. I think it's a good adjunct because the bankers are going to a digital currency. A digital currency is not a cryptocurrency. There's a world difference between a digital currency and a cryptocurrency. Now, some of these bankers may go from digital into some type of crypto, or maybe for special situations. I don't know yet. It's not really out there to be determined yet. But this crypto is outside the system. It is backed by silver. I think it's a great adjunct to your silver position because it's a lot more flexibility, and you have all the metrics that you have in the normal system, meaning, in fact, I just got my digital debit card, meaning I don't have a plastic card. I only have the 12-digit identifiers. So I can buy off of the internet, but I cannot take anything physical into the store and buy with my AGX. But that should be coming within the next few months. So I like it. Doesn't mean you have to like it. I think that this is the direction that's inevitable. And we want to be very careful, in my opinion, on which alternative currencies we choose because some, I think, are just not going to make it, not because they aren't viable, because they're too big of a threat to the power established by the banking system already. I don't think these critters that run the banks really care that much about silver. And once they do, when it gets to that point I just mentioned a moment ago where the quants take over the price, it'll be too late. But even if silver goes to 1,000 an ounce, and I'm saying that metaphorically, I'm just trying to say something so outrageous that people say, well, David's lost it. It still wouldn't do any good in the monetary system. There's so little of it. So could it be monetized at an international banking level? I really say no. Could it be monetized on an individual basis like AGX? Absolutely. So if we get back to a ratio of, say, 16-1, and we're sitting there around 80 right now, and you have put 500 ounces of silver to work for yourself, you're probably going to pay for gas and groceries for a long time. And you just spend it on good services, needs for you and your family or whatever. So I like it, but I don't want to overemphasize it. I think it's part, if you're at that level, if you are at, I stack, a coin a week or a coin a month, I wouldn't bother with it. But if you're in the category where a lot of people that follow your work, follow my work, look at, Bill Holter, look at Jim Sinclair, look at USA Watchdog, look at all of these alternative media and a lot of the ones that, emphasize the fact that you got to have some currency or some monetary value outside of the established system, could consider it. So I might have overspoke it, but I want to be clear. It's probably not for everybody, but I think it's very good for anyone that clearly has I would say, substantial position or even a significant position, but enough of a position and or enough of an understanding of what it means to have that freedom of choice to be able to spend your silver as you see fit, basically outside the system. I would say that's what you should consider.
Well, David, I know our viewers appreciate you joining us here. I understand that you've been expanding the sphere that you appear on out in the blogs and podcasts and so on. I noticed a recent one coming out from the Decrypt Daily podcast, and wonder if you can give people a clue where they can find you on, if they want to see how the full content of this new information you're getting out there on these various platforms.
You bet. The best way is really to get on our free newsletter. Just go to our main landing page, themorganreport.com, and give us a name and an email. We ship all this stuff to you via email. But if you want to, maintain your anonymity, that's fine with me. You just go to the website, themorganreport.com, and just go over to the tab that says blog. Pull that tab down, and almost all the interviews I do that are available to the public. There's obviously some that I don't. People pay me, but those are available, so you can click those. Also, it's easy to find on Twitter, LinkedIn, or even on the Facebook page and YouTube. So there's channels all there. If you go to the blog page, the upper right-hand side, there's the icons for Twitter, the icon for Facebook, the icon for YouTube, and LinkedIn. You just click those icons, it'll be right on our page, and you'll be able to see whatever interviews I've done. But I would ask, I don't ask for much, but, if you do like these, if you like them and send them off, I've never monetized any of my public domain stuff, and I don't plan to. But I would like to get a little more support. I see some of these channels are in the 100,000, 200,000, and I've been on YouTube a lot longer, and it took me forever to go from 20,000 to 30,000. And I don't get it. Not that I think I should be bigger than 30,000. I don't know. The market knows. But I find it interesting that people that I think, excuse me, I don't mean to sound egotistical. I hope I don't. But, I think their content is, equal to mine or maybe not quite. And they just seem to just blast these numbers. And I'm out there, hitting it pretty hard and just getting a snail's pace. And I don't know if it has to do with liking. I don't know if it has to do if you monetize your channel or not. I don't want to. I think somewhat, and this is probably wrong, But perhaps by not monetizing your site, you might be a little less scrutinized than if you do, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, we certainly subscribe from Liberty and Finance to the Morgan Report. People, make sure you go to themorganreport.com, look under the blog, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to get our free newsletter, go to libertyandfinance.com. Just put your name and email address, and you'll be getting 3 times a week all of our interviews and descriptions and any links that the guests provide in terms of special offers or articles that they've written or are referencing or that we talked about. So David Morgan from themorganreport.com. Thank you, as always, for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
Always fun. Thank you.
To acquire gold and silver, just go to libertyandfinance.com. When the main site comes up, click on Bullion Sales. That's libertyandfinance.com, Bullion Sales. You'll see my name, Dunnigan Kaiser, my phone number, and my associate, Kaiser Johnson, his phone number, our email, libertyandfinance@protonmail.com.